Welcome to Environment Variables, where we bring you the latest news from the world of sustainable software development. I'm your host, Chris Skipper, and today we're excited to bring you another episode of Backstage, where we peel back the curtain at the GSF and look into the stories, challenges, and triumphs of the people making a real impact on the environment through software. We're no longer gatekeeping what it takes to set new standards and norms to green software. This first episode of 2025 focuses on the Carbon Aware SDK, a vital tool that helps software developers reduce carbon emissions by running workloads when and where energy is cleanest. The Carbon Aware SDK has been in development since 2022 and is a toolset to help you measure the carbon emissions of your software, in turn helping you measure and reduce your software's carbon emissions and choose when and where you run your software to make it greener. On January the 7th of 2025, we celebrated release version 1.7, which mainly introduces new client libraries for NPM and Java. To coincide with this, we've released this episode of Backstage with sound bites from Vaughan Knight, the chair and project lead of the Carbon Aware SDK. Unfortunately, Vaughan wasn't available to record these, so we've had them read out by an AI-generated voice. Please bear this in mind when listening, and apologies again to Vaughan. Without further ado, let's dive into the first question about the Carbon Aware SDK. The first question we asked Vaughan was, could you start by giving us an overview of the Carbon Aware SDK? What are its main goals and objectives, and why is it important for driving sustainability in software development?
When the GSF started, we had a lot of ideas of software innovations we wanted to build. Decarbonizing Kubernetes clusters, decarbonizing AI model training, and many more. And every single one of these needed to be able to get emissions data easily to make that software carbon aware. It was something that enabled innovation. So seeing this, I decided to propose we start there. Provide a consistent way to get carbon data worldwide, regardless of the data provider. So people could provide green software innovation to everyone. That way, no matter what carbon-aware innovation people were pursuing, we could help accelerate them to get started. But it not only gets the emissions data, it helps you find when and where the emissions were or will be greenest, and takes that thinking away from the developers, giving a consistent decision-making path every time. And one day, as our thinking around this evolves, so will the API, and everyone gets to benefit from that.
How does the Carbon Aware SDK help organizations reduce the carbon footprint of their software operations? Can you give examples of specific sustainability improvements achieved by adopting this toolset?
There are a few ways. Firstly, it helps you get emissions data easily and in a centralized, consistent manner. This abstracts you from the data sources which vary around the world, and also centralizes the measurement, which becomes very important in regulated industries as it's auditable. You don't have multiple approaches across the company. You have a single source of truth to explain your carbon-aware decision-making. In practice, there are a few ways we've seen it working. First one is just awareness, being able to measure to make manual decisions, but being carbon-aware as people who are custodians of software to inform yourself and make greener decisions. Then you act on that information and measure, report, and repeat. Similar to this is using it for hypotheticals. What if we automated this system? What if we deployed into X data center? We have seen organizations get deployments into regions cleared by their security teams to enable greener deployments of software. We have seen organizations identify that by automating and making their software carbon aware to inform decisions, there would be significant emissions reductions. Lastly, on that topic, is organizations using it to schedule where and when large workloads such as AI and ML training happen. These are huge jobs with thousands of machines that run for long periods of time. By identifying where there is capacity in regions that are greener, they significantly reduce emissions with minimal overhead. In many cases, the data is already duplicated in different regions for resiliency. The only things moving is the compute workloads. So the trade-off makes sense.
What key challenges did your team encounter during the development of the Carbon Aware SDK, and how were these obstacles addressed?
The main obstacle we faced was trying to make the Carbon Aware SDK many things versus just focusing on doing one thing well, providing carbon emissions data. We're a small team, so distractions pull us away from the core mission, and we would have requests come in that would be great for some people to have. But the impact of the Carbon Aware SDK comes when it's good for everyone to have. For example, we were looking at writing a cloud-native plugin in Go for Kubernetes, but the reality was we still had a lot of capabilities that were needed in the base SDK that already had active users. Other than that, it's trying to understand the nuances of the various emission sources and understanding how our users were using the platform and getting feedback on the requirements they had. Many of our users, we are not aware of being open source, and we tend to only hear from them when there is a bug or an edge case, and we jump and ask 100 questions to inform our roadmap.
The Carbon Aware SDK allows software to run when and where energy is greenest. Can you explain how this approach has transformed carbon awareness in software development?
We've seen large organizations change their perception from getting emissions data to centralizing and managing carbon intelligence behind carbon awareness as a core business capability. If a business is going to make decisions based on insight, it needs to be managed and centralized to drive consistent, explainable, auditable, and informed decisions.
Could you highlight some of the specific tools or technologies utilized in the Carbon Aware SDK? How do these support the project's goals of reducing software carbon emissions?
Primarily, it's written in .NET, but it's deployed as a REST API in a container. And one of our major contributors, NTT, is a Java house. So they just point it at a Swagger endpoint, generate the clients they need, and have it deployed alongside their Java applications. We've kept the tech stack very thin by design. One of the reasons we didn't build a Go client also, it just was only needed in a few niche situations. And when we looked at some of those further, the .NET solution worked fine. It also can be leveraged as a .NET client library for people that want to build it into their applications. We don't recommend this, but in some cases it's needed. And it also can be called via a CLI. This is great for decoupled software or, for example, old Linux jobs being run by schedulers, and this gives people the ability to make legacy software carbon aware.
Have there been any significant partnerships or collaborations during the development of the Carbon Aware SDK? How have these collaborations contributed to the project's success?
Early on, there was a big contribution from UBS and Microsoft, where UBS used it to make their data science training workloads carbon aware, and also Vestas in Europe, who gave us another big company that meant it was really proven. And of course, NTT, who continue to contribute since the start and are using it for their own workloads. The reason these contribute to success is it's not just our opinion, it's the opinion and perspectives of organizations that are using it in the real world.
What significant achievements or milestones has the Carbon Aware SDK reached so far? How has the project evolved since its inception?
The project graduated in the Linux Foundation, which was a real honor, and something the team took very seriously. This would be the big milestone, to be honest. However, having UBS use it and getting a 0.1 release out will always be close to my heart. We learned so much during that release and met so many amazing people. And lastly would be meeting the team in person. From the US to Japan to the UK, I've had the opportunity to meet the team and core contributors in person, and being able to sit down and talk about our shared passion is something I never thought of when starting the project.
What key lessons have you and your team learned from working on the Carbon Aware SDK that might benefit others working on green software solutions?
Contributors to open source projects come and go again at times, and unfortunately, sustainability might not be their long-term interest. We're all volunteers with a passion, and the real world can get in the way. But many are passionate, and we need to encourage them to contribute, even if small, so they can grow their confidence, capability, and have an impact to help us have a greener world tomorrow. Sometimes contributions can be slow. Reviews can be slow. This is because people might not have as much capacity. So don't add too much to a release just because it's almost ready. Urgent bug fixes always get priority, then major release requirements, and nice-to-haves can wait until the next release. Small and often is where we're trending, and we're still not small enough and often enough as I'd like.
How does the Carbon Aware SDK engage with the broader tech community? What role has community feedback played in shaping the SDK?
We have people in Europe, Japan, and the US that present at community events and others. They engage via the GSF events and .NET user groups, some conferences, NDC Oslo, NDC Sydney, plus other events people get the opportunity to speak at. Also, some of the Microsoft developer events, podcasts, and media at times too. We're a small group, so proactively reaching out can be time-consuming. But if people are interested on us talking at their events in person or remotely, just reach out. We're happy to talk.
What are the next steps for the Carbon Aware SDK, and how do you see it impacting the future of Carbon Aware software development in long term?
Long term, we're really looking at building out samples and examples to help people get started faster. Really show what the SDK can do and open people's minds and get their innovations kicked off. People are constantly asking for geolocation versus named locations. To explain that, currently you configure a geolocation as a named location and then search by those named locations. The reason we haven't done this yet is it creates an anti-pattern of, for example, a telephone asking for its emissions rating once per day. A modest phone app could have 1 million users easily, so that's 1 million requests per day for a device that likely isn't moving emissions region. Similarly, an IoT device asking every hour. For that, we need to deeply think about how we manage this and provide guidance and possibly libraries for people to use that encompasses all the logic that would be required to cache. But it's on our list. And lastly, I'll say it again, great samples so people can go from 0 to awesome in 5 minutes and build out their innovation, not try to figure out how to set up the Carbon Aware SDK and start building their dreams to create a greener future.
Well, we've come to the end of this episode of Backstage. I'd like to thank Vaughan for his contributions, and again, apologies for the use of the AI voice. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. To listen to more podcasts about green software, please visit podcast.greensoftware.foundation, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.